Hello and welcome to an ornithological discussion on the edge. And today we'll be looking at the hawk. So what we have here is the Microtech hawk. There's a murderous looking knife right there. So this apparently is an update of a knife that debuted in 1996 or thereabouts. And then this is basically the re-release of that knife with beefed up internals, apparently a stronger spring, a stronger pivot, and so on. And this actually one of the first ones of that re-release. So this is a proof run knife, and this is serial number 393 there on the blade. See if we can get that a little bit closer. Right, let's lay that down there, and I'm going to be doing the usual, guys, materials, dimensions, and weight, and then we'll speak about design and attributes of this, wow, intimidating looking knife, to say the least. Right, so what we have is a blade of Carpenter CTS 204P. That from a characteristics perspective is very similar to Bowler M390. Now, you do actually get this knife in a couple of other blade steels, so I'm not sure if the proof run was only in the CTS 204P, but you also do get the Hawk in M390 or LMAX, and apparently that depends on just on when the knife was produced, what year or what time of the year, so the experts say. Right, so handle, we've got 6061 T6 aluminium. That's been hard anodized, and then these inlays, sort of a rubbery stuff, and this apparently is a 3M product that sits in there. From what I can pick up, it's called Tractech. I'm speaking under correction, but very grippy on that. And then the hardware, the clip and the screws and so on the knife, those are all stainless steel. And then we've got a pivot. The best I can find is a washer, so I'm going to assume that that is a phosphor bronze washer. If I'm not right, just comment down below. And then we've got a tungsten glass breaker at the back of the knife. Right, let's go through dimensions. Blade length, we've got 100.4 millimeters from the end of the handle to the tip. That is, what did I say, 100.4, so call that 10 centimeters, and that is 3.95 inches. Blade thickness, I measured on my caliper at 4.8 millimeters, so closest diameter to 5 mils, and that's 0.19 inches. Handle thickness, we've got 14.3, sort of at the thickest point, 14.3 or 0.56 inches. But then if you take it at the pivot where it bulges a little bit, and that would be pretty much the same as around the deployment button, we've got 18 mils or 0.71 inches. And then weight of this knife, let's have a look at that. Not actually, doesn't feel in hand quite as heavy as one might think when you see the size of the blade, but that's obviously got to do with the aluminium in the handle that is helping reduce that weight. Right, let's crank this up and have a look, see what we've got. So grams, I'm on 100 and let it settle, 134 grams. So yeah, actually pretty light for this size and style of knife, I guess. And that is 4.7 ounces. Right, scale out of the way, and now speak about let's get that open again. Right, so what we've got here is very clearly a hawksbill blade, so the karambit style of defensive fighting type blade. And then we can see a harpoon style swedge, big swedge running at the back, I suppose a little less than halfway, and it runs almost, well, to that point there of the blade. We've got flat grind, very neatly done, stonewash finish on the blade. Edge on this, by the way, while we're looking at that, yeah, not the greatest, actually. So, pretty neat, but the two sides, see if I can get that on camera. Let's see, there you can see the edge. But the two sides, definitely you can see that side, definitely wider than that side. But very, very sharp out of the box, nevertheless. Anything else on this blade? So obviously we speak about those little circles running down, getting smaller and smaller as they move towards the tip of the blade. And then big sharpening choil there as well. I'm not sure how. I'm not going to attempt to sharpen this knife. That karambit style, but yeah, certainly a very big, beefy, aggressive blade on this knife. Right, let's move to the handle. So the handle in the anodized aluminium, and then I spoke about these inserts, that 3M product in the inserts that really is grippy. It's got a slightly soft, rubbery feel to that. But when you get your hand on that and your fingers get on that portion, it really does give you a lot of purchase on the handle. While I've got it at that angle, let's just look at the size there. So my medium-sized hands, I mentioned that I wear a large glove, fit comfortably on there, but you know, it's surprisingly, when you look at the total size of the knife, it's not actually, the handle is not actually that big. And you can see any beefier hands, you're going to start straying right off the end. I still think you'll get good purchase on the handle, but quite interesting that it's the handle in hand is not quite as big as what it appears when you just see the knife sort of lying there. But very, very comfortable in hand, and obviously a knife that's been designed for reverse grip as well. So that's what it looks like when you get in the reverse grip. And then I'll speak about the jimping now. So we've got that little bit of jimping at the back of the handle. So when you got the hand in, when you got the knife in the reverse grip, that's where your thumb rests on that jimping. And then obviously when you've got it this way around, you've got longer jimping just behind the blade above the button and pivot, where you get good purchase for your thumb there. Is it a knife that you would want to choke up on? I don't know. I'm not really sure how people use these knives. I'm not a big karambit guy. I understand the benefits of it, certainly from a fighting and self-defense perspective, but I prefer my blades to be more all-rounders. But yeah, you can choke up on the blade if there is something, some task that requires that from you. Nice finger choil, front finger choil, so your finger comfortably gets in there. So the handle in general, quite squared off. You know, there's no beveling on the handle. It is rounded a little bit around the edges, but generally sort of end on quite a square shape to the handle. Right, what else do we need to speak about? So let's just look at that general shape. You can see very, very neatly done. So you've got the curve of the blade running and continuing onto the handle. So a total curve there, a little bit more sculpting on that side of the on the inside of the handle. But it certainly does feel very, very good in hand. Finish on the knife, good. You know, no rough edges, and I suppose that's what you should expect from a brand like Microtech, and for the price that you're paying. On this specific knife, I'm quite surprised there's a little bit of side-to-side play on this specific knife, but you know, a little bit of adjustment on the screws I'm sure can sort that out. I'm not going to mess with that. This knife is one of those that's again being provided very kindly to me by Blades and Triggers. Really do appreciate their support. May as well speak about that now. So check out their website for knives like this, other Microtech knives as well. Nice range of out the fronts from Microtech, and other knives as well. Check that out on their website, BNT Online. All right, let's speak about a little bit about the hardware. So Torx hardware, I mentioned stainless steel all round, so easy enough to get into this knife. And let's just get this closed. And then we've got the stainless steel tip up pocket clip, that Chris Reeve style pocket clip with the extra little notch, the extra little kink in the middle of the pocket clip, which I believe helps a little bit with the springiness, but then also gives you another extra gripping point in your pocket as well. Also attractive along the spine of the knife. In fact, let's just hold the knife in that angle and look at that. You can see the whole knife does taper from the back of the handle to the front of the handle. The whole thing has got a gentle taper towards it. So thicker on it, I should say, thicker towards the blade and thinner down towards the glass breaker. But let's just look a little bit at that milling at the back. So that also very attractively done. So you've got these dimples running along there, also getting gradually bigger, and that sort of reflects that theme of the circles that are machined, drilled into the blade. But we've got these dimples, and then on the inside of those dimples you can very clearly see we've got these oblong shapes cut in. So I think, as much for aesthetics and perhaps to make the handle a little bit lighter without losing the strength, the integrity on the handle. And those little oblong cutouts are actually like tunnels. So if you look on the inside, you can see that that portion of this portion along, see, I can do this. This portion along the handle has actually got sort of pillars or tunnels, depending if you're looking at the positive or negative spaces, but that still give the handle its strength. So those oblong shapes are these little tunnels. You can see if I just tilt the angle, little tunnels that are running on the handle, but attractively done. And then obviously it has that practical purpose of making the handle lighter without compromising, as I said, the strength. Right, so what else do we need to speak about? So we've got the stop pin there, very overbuilt stop pin, and you can see a little bit of machining on that, so a bit of detail on that as well. So also attractively done. Just because a knife is a fighting knife doesn't mean it can't have little design touches on it as well. And then the little bit of raised area around the button, the deployment button does stick out, but it does require quite a lot of force to get that. So it's not easily going to deploy accidentally, this knife. And then you can see the little bulge on that side, and that's obviously to make allowance for, I wonder if you can see that in there. So when you're pushing the button there, you can see the piece that moves out of the way to unlock the blade, and that's, I'm assuming, a little bit of space for the spring and for that little bar to move into, this little bulge on that side. Right, let's speak about the action of this knife. And wow, this thing shoots out with authority. When you're going to deploy this knife, get a good hold of it, because you will drop it if you don't. But wow, it does fly out there, and that is a chunk of a blade that's moving at speed. So when that gets to its ultimate point, it does jerk the knife in your hand, but it does feel good. And then, as I mentioned, the knife, obviously clearly designed to be used in the reverse grip in a fighting or self-defense type situation. And you can actually deploy, with a little bit of practice, you can deploy the knife in that reverse grip as well. So again, get good grip on it, and your little finger on the back there, and with enough pressure, you can deploy it in the reverse grip as well. So yeah, that is it. I think I've covered off everything there is on the knife. I don't think I've left anything off. Spoke about the glass breaker. The handle is in two-piece, so it is a closed back design, but it's not an integral. So the handle has been designed as two separate, manufactured, I should say, constructed as two separate pieces of aluminium. And I think that's it. I think I've covered off everything in the knife. Quick glance at the notes to see if I have missed anything out. And then I suppose the only thing now left to do is to do some size comparisons. And I'm going to start with, well, just show another karambit. As I said to you, I'm not really a karambit person, so the only one, or hawksbill type blade shape, the only one that I have, well, I have two. One is in the car, and I was too lazy to go fetch it, so I'm not going to show that to you. And that was the CRK, the little CRKT bear claw. And then the other one is this guy. So both of them are fixed blade knives. And this is the Cold Steel. The Cold Steel, what is this thing called? Double Agent 1. There you go. And that, so this knife and that CRKT are the only, like I say, karambit style knives that I actually do own. But for what it's worth, there you go. There's the Cold Steel versus the Microtech Hawk Auto. And you can see the Microtech Hawk Auto considerably bigger, but a lot more practical as well. And I do understand, I mean, looking at some reviews of guys using hawksbill type knives, that it can be used as a relatively practical knife, but it's not exactly the knife that you're going to be using to cut everyday items or for food prep or anything like that, depending on if you like slaughtering your fruit. Right, so what have we got? Let's do my usuals just to get a bit of size comparison going. So we've got the Spyderco Manix 2. Pop that down there, and you can see he kind of dwarfs the Manix 2 and probably, yeah, I think actually a little bit lighter, even though you do have that big chunky blade. But once again, it's that aluminium construction on the Microtech, or aluminum for our American friends. Right, let's get that out the way, and then move down to the end of my desk there. Here is the Medford Slim Midi. Give you a sense of that as well. Right, there it is. And it's going to probably seem a little ridiculous. Is it on my desk? Yes, it's also way down the other side there. The Benchmade Mini Barrage. There we go. Right. So while I'm doing that, you can see, again, really dwarfs that. But while I'm doing that, at least I got it right this time. I called this a auto. The last auto that I did was a Fox, and now it's the Smarty Fox, and I kept in the review calling it an assisted opening. So it's typical of a guy who doesn't typically like autos or assisted opening knives. But you know, for this kind of knife, the auto certainly does make sense. I suppose if this is you're going to buy a knife specifically for self-defense or for fighting, you do want one that you're not going to fiddle with. You know, pull that out of your pocket, hit the button, and you are ready to go. And it really does feel good in hand. I suppose just the intimidation factor of that knife is going to dissuade any potential assailant. Right, I think that is it. That's all on this very sturdily well-built Microtech knife. So if this is your thing, I think this is a really good option if you're willing to part with this kind of cash. I think it's probably money well spent. This specific one, I mentioned the slight play in the blade, but that'll be easy enough to fix just with tightening, you know, those pivot screws. You can see quite a big Torx there. I didn't measure the size, but all right, let's give you one closer look at this knife before I wrap up. I think I've mentioned everything: the stonewash, the flat grind. Yeah, it is. If this is your thing, like I say, it is a knife that really does feel good and clearly is very well made, and a company that has a good reputation at building very good knives. My first Microtech, by the way, my first Microtech on the channel. So didn't mention that. That should be something to celebrate as well. Right, guys, enough waffle. Let me put that down there. And only thing that's left to say is to thank you once again for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And as I always say, I really would appreciate it if you would subscribe and hit that bell icon so you can be informed every time I release a new video. And if you have subscribed, please share this video. Guys, really do appreciate you, and I guess that is it. Other than that, you go well, and God bless.